Your voice says far more about you than the words you speak. It shapes how people see you, how they trust you, and how you lead. In this episode, we sit down with David Pope, a man who began his career shaping stories in the BBC's editing suites, long before he ever understood edit. Long before he ever stood behind a microphone. David has spent more than 30 years inside recording studios, training rooms and global boardrooms, helping leaders unlock edit. Helping leaders unlock a version of their voice that feels natural, confident and powerful. This conversation goes deeper than presentation skills. It explores identity, confidence, fear, and the surprising link between how you sound and how you feel. If you've ever held yourself back, avoided speaking up, or wished you sounded more compelling, this episode will change how you think about communication. David's journey is rich with insight and his lessons are practical, human, and instantly usable.
Just to put myself in the age so that people understand how old I am, I was working as a runner for this production company, working on pop videos for groups like Aha, Dire Straits, Wham. So the younger people know George Michael, that was Wham. The way that actors could inhabit a character and use their voice to connect to audiences on film or a TV series.
We very rarely end up where we thought we'd end up when we first started out, but we absolutely end up where we're meant to be. That's when it stops feeling like a job, right? It's more like a hobby that you get paid for, which is a lovely place to be.
And
where
exactly.
We all want to be, ideally.
So this is about how we can command the attention of single listeners, or if you're being asked to speak at conferences, entire rooms. They say that people fear public speaking more than they fear death.
I remember running online networking events when I first left corporate world during COVID. Everybody's in lockdown. And I remember 700 people turning up to my online networking event.
She broke down in tears and I was saying, what's going on for you? She was so happy that she'd unlocked something in her. She'd found her true, authentic voice. It wasn't naturally timid, but she was keeping it down. She'd found that power.
It's unlocking the real you that's been beaten into submission over the years. David Pope believes your voice is more than sound. It's your story, your confidence, and your ability to lead. David began his career in the editing suites of the BBC, cutting documentaries, TV series, and feature films, learning how sound could shape emotion and meaning long before he ever stood behind a microphone. That early training gave him a lifelong fascination with how people listen and how powerful a well-crafted voice can be. Today, as founder and executive voice coach at All Voice Talent, David draws on more than 30 years of experience in recording studios to help professionals around the world communicate with clarity, confidence, and presence. He's coached CEOs, lawyers, business leaders, and TEDx speakers, guiding them to use their voice as a tool for influence and connection. His workshops, which are CPD accredited by the Law Societies of Hong Kong, Singapore, and New South Wales, and recognised by the Legal Affairs Department of the Government of Dubai. They blend science, performance, and psychology. Whether working one-to-one, leading a group, or creating online training, David helps good speakers become great ones. David, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Paul. Thank you for that wonderful introduction as well. Thank you.
It's fun. I love this podcast because we get to speak to so many amazing people who have phenomenal stories, and even just having the opportunity to share a small part of those stories is a genuine privilege, David, and your story is no different from what I can see.
Thank you. Thank you.
When did you realise that the BBC was something that you wanted to do, and was it intentional?
Well, first of all, when I graduated, actually, my first job was working for a video production company in London. And this was in the late 80s. And so I was working in pop videos, and just to put myself in the age so that people understand how old I am, I was working as a runner for this production company, working on pop videos for groups like Aha, Dire Straits, Wham. So the younger people know George Michael, that was Wham. And I started the BBC at the BBC because actually what I realized was I was just rubbish at making coffee. Now, the reason I say that is because as part of my role as a runner, I had to make coffee for said pop stars, directors and producers. I just couldn't get it right. So thankfully, I was offered a job at the BBC as an assistant film editor. And that's really where my love of voice began. Working for TV series and also documentaries, and very lucky to be part of the beginning of the feature films as well that the BBC started doing. This was in the late 80s. Yeah, so that's really where my love of voice began.
Amazing. So fortunately, you were crap at making coffee, which meant that you could actually have a... Otherwise, you'd be stuck doing that now, David. You could be like a senior coffee maker at the BBC.
Exactly. And going back to those days, do you remember it wasn't things like, frothy lattes with oat milk and this and that. I couldn't even make an instant coffee. So I think my calling was something a bit better. Yes. So thank goodness, the universe moved in a brilliant way for me.
Or I remember my dad lecturing me on how to make proper tea. And mum and dad this is proper pit tea. My dad was determined that if you didn't bend the spoon, you weren't trying hard enough.
Oh my goodness!
We had a special spoon for it that withstood the pressure of squeezing my dad's tea bag. Honestly, I could go on about that for ages, but that's another story for another day, David. But yeah. So was there a moment early on in that BBC atmosphere and in that environment where you realised that voice could really change how people do things like lead teams, persuade people, connect people? How did you figure out that voice was that important?
I think because a lot of the times that I was working with actors at the BBC, so as my role, I was there to mix the sound, and I was listening to some incredible actors' voices, and this is what really made me understand the connection between like the way that we're leading, right? People leading with their voice, the way that actors, they could inhabit a character and they could use their voice to connect. And in this respect, it was connecting to audiences on film or in TV series. And using that experience, I think as well, moving to Hong Kong and then working as a director with professional voice talent. So underpinning that idea of the way that we use the voice to connect and then to lead, and then taking that experience and using that now with the people that I'm working with in the executive corporate world. So it really started from creating an interest and understanding how people can really use their voice to empower, to engage, to win people, starting with actors, but moving through now to the work that I do in the corporate space.
And you mentioned there that you're out there in Hong Kong now, right? What point of the career did that happen? Like, was that part of the BBC journey, or did that come on your own?
So what happened was, actually, I was in between contracts at the BBC, and I came out to visit a friend that I'd been at university with who had studied Chinese. And so I went here. Here I say I'm running this in Hong Kong now. So I came to Hong Kong in 1995, and I decided to stay. I was really fortunate, actually, because I managed to pick up work as a producer and a director for all of the major publishing companies. So back in the day, we had Oxford University Press, Pearson's, Macmillan's. So I was employed as their producer and their director, working with professional voice talent. And from that, I then moved into working with the same voice talent or different crews on TV commercials, corporate videos, toys, games, apps. So that's really where the whole thing began. And I actually worked out the other day, somebody asked me as a dare how many hours I spent in recording studios. And I worked out that I spent over 30,000 hours in my career as a director sitting in recording studios, either as a director and producer or as a voiceover artist. But the way it all changed and shifting into the work that I do now was because I started getting calls from people saying, I see the work that you do around voice. I work in corporate communications. I'm in business. I'm in legal. I'm in finance. I've been told that I need to improve my communication skills. My boss has given me a review and said that if I want to get promoted, I have to speak with more confidence. I've just been given a new job and I'm in Asia and I've got to fly to New York to present to the board, and I'm terrified of public speaking. And so what I realized was, with all of that experience that I had in the recording studios, I could easily segue from using that as a solid foundation to be able to use the skills and the techniques that I'd learned by really putting in the graft as a director to be able to help people in the corporate space. And so that's really how everything began in this iteration of my business.
Interesting. Special shout out in today's episode for our charity partners, ADHD Liberty, led by Sarah Templeton, who are part of the fight to prevent the school to prison pipeline for ADHD and neurodiverse individuals. If you'd like to find out more, you can visit them. The show links are in the notes below, and I would encourage you to go along and have a look and educate yourself on their fight. It's an incredibly important cause, and we're super proud to have them as charity partners for the MarketPulse Pros and Pioneers podcast. Thank you. Enjoy the rest of your episode. So, what are we saying, that the interest from people to work with you came first and that spurred the business idea on, or were you kind of already looking to do independent coaching at that point and advertising that?
No, I wasn't. Actually, the way it started was because I'd actually written a course for people who wanted to become professional voiceover talent. So I was running courses in the recording studio, teaching want-to-be voiceover actors all about the different genres of voiceover work. So as I said earlier, using a voice to sell a product, using a voice for an educational tool, a toy. Film dubbing was very big in the early days, in the late 80s. So I was doing that specifically around voice actors, but it was kind of my name got out there, and people in the worlds of corporate, training and development were looking for something which wasn't just your presentation skills. They were looking for something which was much deeper, which was about embedding that confidence of being a strong and confident communicator. So it was really, I wasn't planning it. This is how it happened. So it was, serendipitous, really. Yeah.
And we say this all the time on the show, right? Like I must say this phrase more in my professional life than I've ever said anything else, is that we very rarely end up where we thought we'd end up when we first started out, but we absolutely end up where we're meant to be.
I believe that. I absolutely believe that. Yeah. Yeah. I discovered it's something that I love doing and something that I'm good at, and that's a wonderful thing. I enjoy getting up in the morning to go to work, basically.
And that's when it stops feeling like a job, right? Like it's just
exactly.
It's more like a hobby that you get paid for, which is a lovely place to be, and where
exactly.
we all want to be, ideally. Mm-hmm. I talk a lot to young people about, we talk about what's the best job in the world, and quite often the answer comes back as a footballer, because I get paid a fortune. I earn so much money, and yes, but you can only be a footballer who earns that sort of money if you really enjoy being a footballer, and that's the difference between a good job and a great job. Is you enjoy it. And I think that's something that we, certainly in Western education, we struggle to convey that to the young, to the next generation very well. Like we talk about career paths, and would you want to be a lawyer, and where you want to be a professional accountant, and all of these things, and scientist. That's great. What do you enjoy? What parts of what you're doing in your day do you enjoy, and how do we put those together to help you find a career that you actually are good at and enjoy? And I think that's something that a lot of the next generation could benefit from. Again, I could probably do a whole podcast on that as well, David.
I think there's some great ideas coming out of this, Paul. Yeah.
That's another one of my favourite rants. So coming back to it then, you've coached everyone from lawyers, TEDx speakers, CEOs of small and large businesses, large organisations. What patterns have you noticed in kind of how confidently has used their voice, both before they've come to you and once they've worked with you? I guess it leads into what difference does it make?
I think it's it's voice, but it's more than voice as well. So I've been very fortunate because over my career, I've worked with thousands of people globally and across a huge range of industries as well. So, and I think from this experience, I know that really there are three things that can really turn you into a great communicator. The first one is voice, definitely. So this is having a voice that's engaging, it's inspiring, it gets people to, get up and listen, right? But of course, it has to be authentic as well. It's not coming back to the actors. It's not an actor's voice. I'm not getting people to pretend to be something that they're not. The second piece is presence. So this is about how we can command the attention of single listeners, or maybe if you're being asked to speak at conferences, entire rooms. And the third piece is around the delivery of a message, being able to craft and deliver a message that really moves people to take action, to inspire and to educate. And so what happens is people will come to me and they think that they're looking for one particular thing. But what we're doing is we start unpicking it, and actually we realize that there are many areas, many attributes that need to come together. And so for me, that the confidence piece that I get from working with people is that we align the voice, the presence, and the delivery. And when you put those together in a natural and an authentic way, that is really where the confidence comes from. And that comes from, you mentioned that I've worked with senior leadership. I also work with students and fresh graduates. It's the same thing. People come to me, they have an idea. Oh, David, I think that I speak like this and I want to speak like that. I work with them and they realize that actually it's something different or it's a lot more. And that is really, for me, this is what keeps me coming back. It's that transformational piece as well. I just love seeing the changes in people when they get that light bulb moment. Yeah.
It really makes a real difference. And I imagine it makes such a huge difference to their professional and personal life, right? It's
definitely personal. Yeah. Absolutely. We all have to be good communicators, basically. So much now is reliant on us being good communicators. Yeah.
Amazing. And I would imagine that there's a lot of people that come to work with you who are also being asked to or want to speak in public, in large meetings, at events. And I know from personal experience, that can be a terrifying thought. Probably not so bad once you get up there, but the thought of getting up there is terrifying. How do you work with people in that situation? What's the process to break that down?
So the process, a lot of people get in their head about that. And one of the things that I've noticed, actually, when I start talking to people about this fear, they say, I don't know if you've heard this thing, they say that people fear public speaking more than they fear death. So that's a nice thing. So, I'll usually lead with that. No, I don't lead with that. But it's death and spiders, apparently. Death, spiders, and then we've got public speaking right at the top. So, what happens is, in a way, it's kind of an irrational fear. And sometimes we will take it back right to primary school, secondary school, right? Where they maybe were standing up in front of a group and they were shamed. They were shamed either by the people in the class, or sometimes you hear stories about the teacher, oh, you're not very good, you're a terrible speaker. And they carry this through. So this fear of public speaking, it's called glossophobia. And a little bit of fear is good. The adrenaline, the fear that keeps you going, that's really good. But when it's crippling you, when it's really stopping you from going out there and being able to spread your message, to tell your story. People get passionate about something that they want to share. But when it comes to actually speaking in front of a large group, they can't do it. I actually, I've had people, again, in the C-suite who have said to me that they actively choose roles or companies, shifting across to companies that means that they won't need to do the global town halls, for example. And I just think, wow, you're in that senior position and yet you're shunning all of that. And so again, it comes back to sometimes this early on, effectively it's trauma. And so what I'm doing when I'm working with people is I'm getting them to understand the power of their voice. I'm getting them to understand the nuances of their voice. And really, because my whole system is about recording the voice, playing it back and analyzing it. And bit by bit, what I'm seeing is when people have this irrational fear, they're starting to get more confident. Not only am I doing that, but also I have a whole series of exercises that I take them through, which is about grounding, about relaxing. Everything is about the breath, bringing the breath down. This gives you the powerful voice, but it also calms you. It lowers your heart rate. It lowers your blood pressure. And so I do a lot of visualization exercises. So if people are coming to me and they've got this real fear of public speaking, I go at it from many different angles. And really it's trying to help them to nurture, to put that trauma from maybe many years ago aside, because it's just irrational. And that's really how it works. And then to get them out on the stage. And that's what I love seeing, that we just recently had a big TEDx event here in Hong Kong, 3,000 people. And I was working with some of the people there. And it's just amazing seeing them. They get out on the stage. When I saw them like 4 months ago, that when they were starting, it's like, the fear, just very slow process, but it can be done. And that, again, is just that transformational thing. I absolutely love it. Love it.
That's amazing. And to come at that from a different angle, obviously you've been in a professional position where you've been learning how to help people with these things. You've been experimenting over time. But it's also something that you've had to come to be good at as well, right? Like, because you've got to lead by example and be able to exemplify that. So what's the journey that you've been on with your public speaking?
Wow, good question. Okay, so coming back to the fact that I said that I spent a lot of time in recording studios. Right, recording studios, what are they like? The booth, right? It's soundproof. The door closes. I'm sitting there on a stool. I've got the script in front of me. I've got headphones on, a very small light, womb light. That to me is my safe, happy space. So I was working, this was like about 20 years ago, I was working with a client specifically on them, getting them to be better public speaker. And this said client said to me, David, you need to increase your visibility. And one of the things that you need to do is you should think about workshops, delivering workshops. Now, my self-saboteur immediately was like, no, I can't do that. I can't do that, because I'm very good at sitting in a small space, directing people. But the idea of getting up on the stage, you're imparting knowledge. You're a trainer. You've got to be funny. You've got to tell stories. Like, I can't do that. I can't do that. But I put that self-saboteur aside. I said, David, you've got to do it, right? The next phase for your business, you've got to ramp it up. So I said yes. 25 years down the line, I speak at conferences, I speak at town halls, I speak at, very big events. And I don't have that irrational fear anymore. I have nerves, but I think that's good because that keeps me in the zone. But, and I say this to every person, especially like people starting out in their career, say yes to things. Say yes to, if somebody wants to, the group to do a presentation, put your hand up. I will do it. I'll do it. Say yes if somebody in the company wants somebody to MC the event. Even if it's like, it's in the pantry, the canteen, and it's a birthday speech. It's a member of staff's birthday. Get up and make that speech. You've got to train that confidence muscle. So, I'm a prime example of somebody, I had to get through that. And now, again, it's like public speaking. I firmly believe that if you've got the right mindset and you have the techniques to be able to develop into a good communicator, the whole public speaking thing can go from something that's like worse than death, terrifying, into actually something that's really quite enjoyable. So yeah, I think, that's the way forward. Just say yes to it, get through it.
I think that's something that can apply to so many things as well, David. Like, I think that's a great lesson to take away from the episode for a lot of people is, we mentioned before about you often get where you're meant to be, but that only happens if you're brave enough to walk through the door when it opens.
Absolutely.
Otherwise, you'll be stuck where you thought you would be. And, we talked before the episode started. I remember running online networking events when I first left corporate world during COVID. Everybody's in lockdown. And I remember 700 people turning up to my online networking events.
Amazing.
It was absolutely terrifying. But once I'd done 2 or 3 of those, it became a bit more normal. Nerves, yes, absolutely. But it was fun. And the focus shifted from, my goodness, how terrifying is this, to how can I actually help 700 people get better at their jobs as a result of what we're offering here?
I think that's it. I think people kind of make it all about themselves. It's like my fear. Exactly. If you spin it and that idea of what knowledge have I got? What can I give to people? And that you counteract that fear. And that's where you get that boost of confidence. Wow, I have got something to say. Yes, I have got that experience. I do have that knowledge. I can help people. And, people are always rooting for somebody. And if you screw up, it doesn't matter. I've been with people, I've watched them on the stage. They've made a mistake. They've laughed. Some of them have got terrified and the crowd is with them. In our world, people aren't there to sort of, punch them down, beat them down. They're there to build them up and support them, really. Yeah.
Probably don't want to do that if you're an onstage comedian, but otherwise you're all right. Yeah. And it's interesting. I remember one of our guests, he became ironically also out in Hong Kong, who was a very senior sales leader for his corporate business. But on his hobby was being a comedian on stage. And he's done tremendously well as a comedian. And he realized the power of being able to take people on that journey as a comedian, relayed into his professional life, made him extremely successful as a salesperson.
Absolutely.
We've had magicians for the same thing, right? Like, they're now business coaches and they understand how to help. It's that telling of the story, and it's the optical presentation of what they're doing, but also how they talk about that and how they present that. And I think there's so many alternative career paths from people who are good at something else because they've found how to present themselves, how to talk, how to communicate more effectively, how to tell their story, or the story of something they're passionate about. I love it. It's so rewarding to be part of that journey, and it's why I love podcasts. Because I'm helping share so many other people's journey through interview, through asking the right questions, and just being curious. So what was the point then, David, where you decided that actually you're going to take the leap and go all in as David Pope and run All Voice Talent? What was the crucible?
So I founded All Voice Talent in 2010. And what I realized was that I was actually the only person who was running these specific training courses for executives, for corporates. So in other words, inviting people to come to our professional recording studio and working with people on the voice intensive program, which I developed subsequently, to be able for them to really understand how they sounded. So there were many courses around about presentation skills, for example, but nothing which really honed into the intricacies of voice. And from that voice, the presence, the storytelling piece, but really doing a deep dive into it. And so that's where I realized I was onto something, because I started picking up some very good contracts from very prestigious companies, global companies. So, I realized that there was definitely a need, so I could grow the company through that.
Amazing. And so how's the business kind of evolved since those early days? Because obviously at the beginning it's just you, right? Is it still just you, or has it grown?
It is. The problem is, and I don't know if this is about the own business owner, I've sort of become the brand. I did try several years ago to sort of move away and to train people up, but what I found is that, and I don't want to say this in an arrogant way, but because I've been doing this for a long time, people just wanted to work with David. And it's sort of, it's a great thing, but it's also an annoying thing because I kind of sometimes need a break. But basically what happened was, so as I said, I started running these sessions, the one-on-ones in a recording studio. Then I moved it into a boardroom situation. So giving people the choice. So I go into a boardroom of like a global bank or a law firm, and I bring all my audio equipment. And then, of course, COVID happened. And then I started adapting this and running it online. So typically now what you will find in any 1 month, I am running sessions either in the studio or in boardrooms or online. But then what happened was that the workshops. So this person, as I said, that I was working with, this client said, you need to ramp up the business. So I started developing workshops. And as I got more confident in doing workshops, and then as you said in the introduction, I was very fortunate that 2 of them got CPD accreditation. And because of that, they had added credibility. So then what I found myself doing was delivering the workshops around the APAC region. So from Tokyo to Seoul, to Beijing, to Singapore, in Hong Kong, and then expanding that as well. So in a few weeks' time, I'm going down to Australia. I'll be working in Sydney and Melbourne. I've been doing that for a few years. And then I've been going into the Middle East as well. I've been working in Saudi Arabia and Dubai. And then just before Christmas, I'll be back in the UK working in London. So these sort of developed. And again, it scaled. But then the final piece was actually somebody that I was working with. And she was the head of, well, she is the head of learning and development for one of the big Fortune 500s. She said, David, the next thing that you need to do to scale your business is to create online video courses. So I did that about 5 or 6 years ago. And those are a cost-effective way because, I can't be everywhere at once. And so basically people who are wanting to work on the areas that I coach on, they can actually download, they can work with me on these videos. There's workbooks. So we've done all, it's modular. They get to do tests. They get to record themselves, all of that. So they're getting that experience. So that's how it started. It started small. I listened to the market. It then built into workshops, which got my name into the sort of bigger arena. And then now I've broadened it, the scope, to do online videos. So I think that's it. I think there's no more to come. I think I've done enough.
Efficient and effective, right? But that's lovely to hear. And I think that's what so many business owners need to be doing is we kind of get stuck into our business and we're very rigid about what we want to do at the beginning. And some people never move beyond that.
Yeah.
And it's sad to see because there's so much more evolution to those businesses. And quite often they end up failing if they don't move with the market. And, again, similar story for myself. We started out and I thought the majority of our work would be content interviews with people. So creating kind of, if you like, a fake podcast series for business owners to share their story and their vision and journey. And actually where we've ended up is much, much more focused on podcasts themselves. And it's fun. I enjoy it. And it's what the market wants and needs. So why not move with it?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's also, I think, as well as, the learning through this. And I think for listeners as well, my learning from this is listen to people. What I did was I've listened to key people in my space giving me advice, and I've listened to the market. I've listened to those key people. So it's really, for me, it's about getting trusted advisors around you. People in my area, working in learning development, working in training, working in video production. Who can I call on? So listening to those people, what are the trends? What's going on? And then basically making yourself accountable to them as well, and so hitting those levels that, they're saying, okay, have you done this? Have you done that? And that's really what's kept me going. Yeah.
And you mentioned that you've delivered these workshops and coaching across the world, right? So what are some of the kind of cultural differences that involve like the communication style shifts across those regions and geographies? Because I can't imagine Is it the same communication styles that you see in Seoul and Hong Kong that are valid in Europe, or is there difference?
Yeah, I mean, there are definitely differences, and it's to do with sort of introvert, extrovert, it's cultural implications as well. So I was recently in Dubai, and I was invited to run a workshop for a select group of Emirati women. And the nature of that workshop, it was much quieter, it was more reserved. Prior to that, I had come from Singapore, and I was working with a group, and it was a marketing group of people, and you had a mix of sort of extroverts and introverts, but many different nationalities within that workshop as well. So Emirati women, and specifically their culture, and then you had a mixed group. And then, as I said, I'm going down to Melbourne and Sydney in a few weeks, and I've been going there for a few years now. Very typically outgoing, a bit mouthy, and they sort of, they come back with, yeah, but. So it is very, very different. But what I've learned as a trainer, as running these workshops specifically around communication, I always respect cultural norms. So as you said, Seoul, very different, Tokyo, very different to maybe a workshop in London. I always do that, but we need to ask ourselves in a business context around, it's basically two questions. Can I be understood? Am I engaging? Because typically the people I'm working with, whether they're in Seoul, they're in Tokyo, they're in Dubai, whatever, in their positions, especially if it's like a multinational company, they are going to be talking to people from different regions globally. They're going to be reporting back in teams. So we all have specific issues around the way that we speak. So it's not so much the cultural thing. Yes, we communicate in different ways, but the fundamentals, are we speaking too quickly? Can we be understood? This is about articulation. Are we being very monotone in our delivery? So can we spice it up a bit by having a little bit more intonation, being more engaging? These are all universal. It doesn't matter what language, what culture, these are universal themes. And that to me, Paul, is the core of it.
I love that. And I think there is so much that people can take away from this episode. If this is something that you're struggling with, I think that, if you play this back and listen to the individual elements of what David's talked about there, I think there's so much that you can pick up on and take away. And I guess before we go, David, I'm just curious, is there a moment from your coaching career that's really stayed with you, that's empowered you as you moved on? Like, is there somebody that you've seen transform, particularly that blew you away with the transformation process that's made you even more passionate about what you do?
In truth, there have actually been so many over the years. And I think there's pressure within this corporate world. There's pressure not only to perform well at your job, but to actually sound good while you're doing it. But you don't have to make drastic changes. Even these small changes can have a big impact. So there was a particular person I was working with about 10 or 12 years ago. She was in a senior leadership role, but she was actually quite timid. And she'd risen up into this role, but she was now needing to speak to the global teams. So she approached me and she basically said, I need to have more gravitas. I need to be more grounded in my delivery. So I worked with her specifically on that area. So to move from being timid in the voice to having more volume, not shouting, but having that projection, being more grounded, thinking about a little bit about depth, the pitch of the voice, but at the same time, keeping it natural, not going too low so it sounded really phony. So we were playing around with many different contexts, many different recordings. So as I said, my whole process is record, playback, analyze. And we were doing this. And at the end, what happened was I played her voice, and I'm always trying to find like the optimum recording, that sweet spot where everything comes together. So I'm playing her this voice, and she broke down in tears. And I was saying, what's going on for you? And she was so happy that she'd unlocked something in her. So she'd found like her true authentic voice, that it wasn't naturally timid, but she was keeping it down. She'd found that power. But also, Paul, what I noticed was something that happened with her physically, because as the session was unfolding, I was noticing the body was rising. The chest was coming up. The shoulders were going back. It was like, the neck, everything was aligned. I was watching her body opening up. And so you had this voice, and then you had this presence, and then you really had this executive presence, this gravitas, this authority. That to me is probably the most memorable, this incredible transformation. So, and that really is that's what I love about this work, is these small transformations. That to me was a big one, but I'm always getting these small changes. And remember, it's just the small changes, the tweaks that we need to make. Speak with a bit more volume, people begin to see you as a stronger person. Slow down a bit, people see you that you have more authority and gravitas, that you're not nervous. Get rid of the the ums, the knows, the sort ofs. It shows that you're more confident as a presenter.
Yeah, I love that. There are obviously so many benefits to that, and I think that it's interesting to see, exactly as you've said, right? It's not a fake persona that you're trying to take on. It's unlocking what's already the real you that's sat within, that's been beaten into submission over the years. It's letting that free. And I talk a lot to my, when I talk with my clients, obviously I'm in the transcription business, right? So I work with transcript editing. And for me, I really, as an ADHD person, I really struggle with the visual editing. I can't take a video and see that's the start point, that's the end point. I have to look at the transcript, and it's immediately obvious when I read the transcript. But as somebody who spends a lot of time working with that, certainly for my own content and my own editing, filler words are something that I've come to detest massively, because I see how much they get in the way of what you're trying to communicate.
Yes.
And if I think back to when I first started, it's just that momentary pause where you're giving your brain time to think about what you want to say. That's all it is.
Yeah.
Once you come to understand that, and you start to combat that and listen to yourself back, I think that's extremely important to all of the audience that are listening. You're never going to like hearing yourself talk, probably. You're never going to like seeing yourself on camera, right? We all have that same, it never goes away. We get more used to it. It's tolerable, absolutely. I still think I sound boring and like a foghorn, but it works, and I know people respond to it. So I've learned to turn down what I like and what I don't like, because it's not about me. It's about my audience.
Yeah, it's being authentic. Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. People try too hard. Coming back to the acting thing, people try and pretend to be somebody, right? Yeah. I will get people calling me up and they'll say, David, can you help me sound like Benedict Cumberbatch, right? And I go, no, it's not going to happen. I want to sound like Obama. I want to sound like Michelle. It's not going to happen. We've got our own authentic voice, and that's that uniqueness. We work from that, and then we can build. Absolutely. Don't pretend to be somebody else.
I've thoroughly enjoyed this conversation, David. Thank you so much for spending the time with us today to share your story and the advice that you've got from that amazing career that you have. And is there anything that you'd like to leave the audience with before we wrap the show?
Well, first of all, I would like to say, if you have got anything high stakes coming up, if you've got a job interview, if you've got a pitch or a presentation, just as Paul said about recording, record your voice. Record your voice and play it back, because this is where you're going to pick up all of these nuances that might affect the way that you come across. So are you doing lots of ers and ums? Are you speaking too quickly? Is your intonation on point? Are you saying something in 5 minutes when you could say it in 2 minutes? Being succinct in your messaging. So people don't like doing it, but record yourself and play it back. That's the advice I want to give to every listener.
Amazing advice. Thank you very much, David. And
Pleasure.
if you're watching or listening along and you'd like to reach out to David, I'll make sure that his contact details are in the show notes as well. Thank you very much for sharing your time today, David. And,
Absolute pleasure, Paul. Thank you so much for you sharing your time with me. I've thoroughly enjoyed it. I want to know more about tea, though.
Or we'll do that off air, so I don't bore.
Yeah, we'll do that off air. Okay, great.
Thank you very much for watching or listening along, and we will see you next week on the MarketPulse Pros and Pioneers podcast. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks for joining us for today's show. I hope you enjoyed it. If you'd like to feature on a future show, or you've got some ideas for folks who would make a great guest, please drop us a line. Contact details are in the show notes, and I'd love to hear from you. Your host today was me, Paul Banks, founder at Javelin Content Management. Here at Javelin, we specialise in helping busy business owners just like you to repurpose video content, taking all the stress and tech problems away and turning your long-form video into literally hundreds of pieces of content without breaking the bank. We describe it as getting ideas out of your head into video and out to your socials. If you want to launch your personal brand, become the vendor of choice for your audience, or maximise your sales revenue impact, we'd love to hear from you. Join us next Wednesday for the next episode, and don't forget to subscribe and give us a review. Our podcast is only possible with your continued support.